Hi, I'm Natalie Warburton. I'm Associate Professor of Anatomy here at Murdoch University, and I do research within the Harry Butler Research Institute. So I studied zoology at uni. I was really interested in how animal bodies are put together, and the research that I do stems from understanding how animal bodies are put together and then applying that to perhaps animals that we haven't seen before. I think I've always really loved animals and watching them move and looking at the differences between animals. What's interesting to me is why some animals would look a particular way and others would look differently. And so I'm interested in the sorts of processes that shape how animal bodies have evolved and being able to interpret their stories from parts of their anatomy. I watched a lot of David Attenborough, obviously growing up in a house of teachers, just being exposed to the amazing diversity of life that we were able to see through that and continue to see through that. I also am really interested in just the beauty of animals and the beauty of anatomy. I mean, there's so many beautiful parts of skeletons and muscles and tendons. Everything is really interesting and intricately put together. So obviously with fossils, all we've got to work on are bones and teeth. And so what's involved in that is looking at the shapes of the different elements of the skeleton and piecing those together like a jigsaw. But to understand how they work together, we need to understand how those bones work in living animals. And so a lot of the work that I do that allows me to work on fossils involves looking at how the muscles are attached to bones and how the tendons work around the joints and the different shapes of the bones at the joints to see how they work together. By understanding all of the differences that we see in living animals, I can then look for patterns reflected in the fossils as well. By being able to interpret what's going on with the way the bones are working together with muscles, I can then understand how it moved within its environment and perhaps whether it was using its arms for feeding or how was it chewing its food, and on the basis of that, what sorts of things was it likely to be eating or using its environment. So we can trace back all these different stories within marsupial evolution to their beginnings and the sorts of environments that they began evolving within. The Thylacoleo caves were discovered in the 1990s. Since that time, we've described a number of really unusual, particularly wallaby and kangaroo species from that area. The species that we've most recently described is called Congruous kitcheneri, which is an unusual name. And it was originally named congruous from skulls and teeth that were known of this species. But at that stage, we didn't have any skeleton. And so the fossils that have come more recently from the Nullarbor caves have enabled us to build the body back onto those wallabies that had been previously named. So these congruous kitcheneri wallabies have got giant hands, which are really unusual, with big curly claws. You kind of think, well, that's not going to work very well for moving around on the ground. Why on earth would a wallaby have great big curly claws on its hands and feet? Which suggests that probably they were climbing into the trees for some kind of food source. So by understanding fossils and the animals that were present, it enables us to understand the environment better. So for the Nullarbor, if we have 3 species of tree climbing wallabies in an area that doesn't have trees now, and these fossils are, less than 100,000 years old, it's telling us there was some really big changes that happened in the environment that perhaps we didn't recognise before. I'm looking at a number of different marsupial groups now, so the wallabies from the Nullarbor, but also bandicoots in terms of how they dig in the environment and they're turning over soil and how that helps maintain ecosystem health. Looking at that back through time, thinking about how we can use different methods, new technology to help us understand animal bodies better and predict from fossils what they were doing. So there's a whole wealth of ways that we can understand how animal bodies are working to therefore interpret ecosystems, make predictions about how ecosystems might change, help us to manage our ecosystems moving forwards. Here at Murdoch University, I teach anatomy to a range of students. For vet students, obviously understanding normal anatomy and how animals work is really important. For forensic students, it's about what stories bones can tell. So at Murdoch, we really kind of can develop a number of different disciplines by bringing all of these expertise together, which I think is really important.